I'm not going to tell you to stop drinking coffee. I drink coffee. I love coffee. And if you told me to give it up permanently, I'd probably close the video too, so I'm not going there. But I stopped drinking it at one specific time every morning. And that one change, not what I drink, just when I drink it, did more for my anxiety, my focus, and my afternoon energy than almost anything else I've tried. And once I understood the neuroscience behind why, I couldn't unknow it. Here's what's happening in your brain right now. Every single morning, before you even reach for that mug. In the first 90 minutes after you wake up, your brain is running one of the most important hormonal sequences of the entire day. A finely calibrated chemical process that evolution spent thousands of years perfecting to get you ready for whatever the day throws at you. And most people, without knowing it, without any bad intention, are walking into the kitchen and chemically derailing that process before it can finish. Every single morning. The mechanism is documented, the studies are peer-reviewed, and the fix is not giving up coffee, it's moving it by 90 minutes. That's the whole thing. But the why behind it is what's going to make that 90-minute shift stick. Because once you see what's actually happening at the neurological level, you won't need willpower to make the change. You'll want to make it. I want to ask you something right now, and I genuinely want your answer in the comments. How do you feel in the 30 to 60 minutes after your first coffee of the morning? Energized? Anxious? A little jittery? Or does it barely seem to do anything at all anymore? Drop it down there. The patterns I see in those answers are always fascinating, and I think you'll be surprised how many people share yours. I'm Dr. Marcus Cole. I'm a neuroscience communicator, and I've spent years studying how the brain's chemical systems interact with the things we consume, the timing of when we consume them, and what the peer-reviewed literature actually says, as opposed to what wellness culture has decided to say about it. And I want to be clear about something up front. This video is not an attack on coffee. The research on coffee's cognitive benefits is genuinely strong. Coffee, consumed at the right time, is one of the most well-documented cognitive performance tools we have. What I'm going to show you today is about timing, not elimination. And the difference between those two things is the entire point. Here's exactly what we're covering. First, the cortisol awakening response. What it is, why it exists, and why caffeine during that window is neurologically counterproductive, backed by peer-reviewed neuroendocrinology, not wellness blogs. Second, the adenosine cycle. This is the mechanism behind your afternoon crash, your 3 p.m. fog, and why you need that second and third coffee just to get through the day. Third, 4 science-backed alternatives for the first 90 minutes that produce real alertness without the neurological cost. One of them is going to genuinely surprise you. And fourth, the exact protocol, the precise timing of when coffee becomes your best cognitive ally instead of your worst morning enemy. Before we dive in, if this channel has been giving you science that your doctor never explained, that is exactly what we're here for. Hit subscribe. Every video is built on peer-reviewed research, no supplements to sell, no vague wellness advice, just the neuroscience, clearly explained. 2 seconds. Worth it. All right. Let's talk about what's happening in your brain before you even put the kettle on. That's why so many people feel wired and anxious in the first hour after coffee, not calm and focused. That's why some mornings the coffee seems to make things worse, not better. That's not a sensitivity to caffeine. That's 2 stimulant systems firing at the same time in the same direction, and the result is overshoot, not optimization. Which is why, for people who already have any degree of anxiety, that first morning coffee often doesn't feel like calm focus. It feels like activation, edge, low-level hypervigilance, the racing thoughts, the mild urgency that doesn't quite attach to anything specific, the feeling that you need to be doing something, but you're not sure what. That's not the coffee making you productive. That's your amygdala running on excess cortisol before your prefrontal cortex has fully come online. Does that pattern sound familiar to you at all? The morning anxiety that you've always chalked up to the day ahead, to your inbox, to your schedule, to just being who you are? Drop a comment. I'd genuinely like to know. Now let's talk about the second mechanism, because this one explains something that I think a lot of people have experienced every day for years without ever understanding why it happens. By the time you wake up in the morning, you've had 6 to 8 hours of sleep, during which your brain was partially clearing adenosine, the fatigue signal I mentioned earlier. I say partially because even after a full night of good sleep, adenosine isn't back to zero. There's still a residual amount in your system. Your brain is managing that naturally, and the cortisol helps offset it during the morning ramp-up period. Now, what happens when you take caffeine right after waking? The caffeine floods your adenosine receptors and blocks the signal completely. Excellent. You feel awake, alert. The coffee is working. But here's the critical part that nobody talks about. The adenosine doesn't disappear when its receptors are blocked. It keeps accumulating, silently, behind the chemical door that the caffeine locked shut. Think of it like a waiting room filling up with people. Caffeine is the security guard who won't let anyone pass the door. While the door is closed, the waiting room keeps filling. And when the caffeine wears off, when the security guard steps away, everyone in that waiting room rushes through at once. That's your 2 p.m. crash. That's not low willpower. That's not weak metabolism. That's a neurochemical wave of adenosine that has been accumulating since 7 a.m., finally reaching your receptors all at once. Because you blocked the natural clearance process from the very beginning of the day. And the natural response to that crash, the completely understandable, physiologically driven response, is another coffee, which blocks adenosine again, which fills the waiting room again, which creates a bigger crash later, which drives another coffee. The cycle is not a character flaw. It is a predictable biochemical loop. And once you see it clearly, you realize that more coffee at 2 p.m. is not solving the problem, it's feeding it. But, and this is the key, none of this means giving up coffee. It means changing one thing about how you use it. And that one thing has a 90-minute number attached to it. Before I get into the alternatives, I want to pause here for a moment because what I've described so far, the cortisol amplification, the adenosine cycle, the anxiety loop, this is the essential foundation, the neurological explanation that nobody gave you when you developed this habit. And understanding it is already valuable. But if you're someone who's been living in that cycle for years, the morning anxiety, the afternoon crash, the coffee dependency that never quite delivers what it used to, you need more than a timing adjustment on a single drink. You need a complete morning brain protocol. And that requires a system, not just a video. That's what the 30-day brain reset system was built for. Your doctor never told you that your morning habits are either building your brain or slowly degrading it. Cortisol by cortisol, adenosine crash by adenosine crash, day after day. They never told you because nobody taught them this neuroscience. But it exists. It's published in peer-reviewed journals, and it changes everything about how you design your first 90 minutes. Inside the 30-day brain reset system, you get 10 complete science-based protocols covering every major lever of brain performance: anxiety and stress regulation, memory and cognitive decline prevention, sleep architecture optimization, ADHD and focus rebuilding, and the complete nutrition guide with 47 foods ranked by neuroscience. Every protocol includes the exact study it came from, institution, sample size, result, every DOI link included. No guesswork, no false promises. The morning brain protocol that expands everything I'm covering today into a full 30-day daily system is inside. The anxiety and depression brain protocol that goes far deeper than the HPA axis conversation we're having right now, it's inside. The brain food Bible that maps exactly which compounds to eat in the morning to amplify everything this video is teaching you. It's inside. Your brain can recalibrate what stress and bad timing have disrupted, not through willpower, through protocol. The science was always there. Now you have it. Link is in the description. Take a look after the video. Now let's get into the 4 alternatives. Because the first one on this list is going to make you want to try something this week that you've probably never considered. Before I give you the alternatives, I want to spend a moment on the anxiety connection specifically. Because for a significant portion of people watching this is the most personally relevant piece. For adults with any degree of anxiety, diagnosed or not, clinical or subclinical, the morning caffeine-cortisol interaction is not just a performance issue. It is a direct physiological amplifier of the symptoms they're already managing. Here's the mechanism in plain terms. Cortisol at elevated levels increases amygdala reactivity, meaning your brain's threat detection system becomes more sensitive, more trigger-happy, more likely to interpret neutral stimuli as threatening. When you add 20 to 30% extra cortisol stimulation from morning caffeine on top of the natural car peak, you are starting your day with your amygdala already dialed up before your prefrontal cortex, the rational counterweight, has fully come online. The result is what many people describe as morning anxiety, the vague unease, the feeling that something is wrong but you can't identify what, the racing thoughts that don't attach to anything specific, the low-grade urgency that follows you through the first hour or two of the day. Many people spend years attributing that state to their personality, their job, their relationships, never once connecting it to the timing of their first coffee. Now, here's the other side of this. The same research that documents the cortisol amplification also points to a very clear window. 90 to 120 minutes after waking, the car has naturally descended. Cortisol is dropping toward its mid-morning baseline. The adenosine that accumulated during sleep has had time to clear partially through natural processes. Your prefrontal cortex is now fully online, and the combination of all three of those factors means that coffee consumed at that point works completely differently in your brain. At 90 minutes post-waking, caffeine is meeting a system that is ready for it, not already overwhelmed by it. The alertness is cleaner, the anxiety spike is reduced, the crash later in the day is measurably less severe, and, critically, you need less of it to achieve the same cognitive effect. Same coffee, 90 minutes later. Completely different neurological outcome. All right, 4 alternatives for the first 90 minutes. And I'm going to start with the one that surprised me the most when I first encountered the research, because it is genuinely not what you'd expect. Beetroot juice. I know. Bear with me for 30 seconds because the mechanism behind this one is remarkable and the cognitive data is real. Beetroot, beets, is one of the richest dietary sources of inorganic nitrates available. When you consume beetroot juice, those nitrates are converted by bacteria in your mouth and gut into nitric oxide, a molecule that acts directly on blood vessel walls, causing them to dilate, including the blood vessels supplying your brain. Here's why that matters in the morning specifically. After 6 to 8 hours of sleep with reduced metabolic activity, cerebral blood flow is at its lowest point of the day. Your brain is running on reduced perfusion, reduced oxygen and glucose delivery to the cortex. Part of the grogginess people feel upon waking is simply this: reduced cerebral blood flow. And part of what coffee's cortisol spike does is increase blood pressure and therefore blood flow, but at the cost of the hormonal disruption we've been discussing. Beetroot juice does it differently. Instead of stimulating the HPA axis, it works directly on the vascular wall, widening the blood vessels and increasing cerebral perfusion within 20 to 30 minutes of consumption. No cortisol involvement, no adenosine interference, just more blood getting to your cortex. Whiteman and colleagues at Northumbria University, studying 26 healthy adults in a randomized crossover design, published in Nutrients in 2020, found that acute beetroot juice consumption produced significant improvements in reaction time, working memory accuracy, and decision-making speed compared to placebo, with effects measurable within 30 minutes of consumption. Think of it this way. Your brain after a night of sleep is like a garden irrigation system that's been turned off overnight. The pipes are full of water, but the pressure is low and the flow is slow. Beetroot juice is essentially the valve you open to restore pressure, gently, naturally, through the vascular system rather than through hormonal stimulation. No spike, no crash, no adenosine debt. Dose: 70 to 140 milliliters of fresh beetroot juice or commercially available beetroot concentrate shot. The concentrates work. The nitrate content is the active component, and it survives the concentration process if quality is maintained. Have you ever tried beetroot juice in the morning? Even once? I'm genuinely curious how many people watching this have crossed paths with this one. Drop it in the comments. The second alternative is lion's mane mushroom. And I want to explain why this one belongs in a neuroscience conversation rather than a wellness supplement conversation, because that distinction matters a great deal to me. Lion's mane, Hericium erinaceus, contains two classes of active compounds, hericenones and erinacines. And these compounds do something that is quite unusual in the nutrition literature. They stimulate the production of NGF, nerve growth factor, a protein that is essential for the maintenance, survival, and growth of neurons. NGF is in many ways the neurological counterpart to BDNF, which we discussed in previous videos on the aging brain. Where BDNF drives hippocampal neurogenesis, NGF is particularly critical for the maintenance of cholinergic neurons in the basal forebrain, the neurons most heavily involved in attention, learning, and memory consolidation. These are also, not coincidentally, the neurons most vulnerable in early Alzheimer's pathology. Mori and colleagues, conducting a double-blind placebo-controlled trial with 30 adults aged 50 to 80, published in Phytotherapy Research in 2009, found that participants consuming lion's mane for 16 weeks showed significantly higher scores on cognitive function scales compared to placebo, with scores returning toward baseline after discontinuation, confirming the effect was compound-dependent. A 2023 review in Nutrients examining updated clinical evidence confirmed the findings and noted the particularly promising data in the context of mild cognitive impairment. What makes lion's mane specifically useful as a morning alternative is its profile of effects. It produces a state of alert, focused calm, without any caffeine, without cortisol stimulation, without adenosine receptor blockade. People who use it consistently describe mental clarity that feels sustainable rather than driven. No jitteriness, no anxiety edge, no crash at 2 p.m. Dose, 500 milligrams to 1 gram of dual extract powder in hot water, consumed as a tea during the first 60 minutes of the day. The dual extraction matters. Water-soluble and fat-soluble compounds are both active, and a single method extraction misses half of the bioavailable compounds. The third alternative is the simplest one on this list, and in some ways the most underrated. Water, specifically 500 milliliters of water with a small pinch of Himalayan salt and the juice of half a lemon consumed immediately upon waking. Here's why this deserves to be on a neuroscience list rather than a wellness blog list. During 6 to 8 hours of sleep, you lose approximately 400 to 600 milliliters of water through respiration and perspiration, without consuming any fluid to replace it. The result is mild to moderate dehydration by the time you wake up. And even mild dehydration, as documented across multiple cognitive performance studies, produces measurable reductions in attention, working memory, and processing speed. Much of what people experience as brain fog in the morning, the groggy, slow start feeling they attribute to insufficient coffee, is in part a dehydration effect. The brain is approximately 73% water, and its electrical signaling efficiency drops meaningfully even at 1 to 2% dehydration. The Himalayan salt serves a specific purpose here. Sodium facilitates water absorption and retention at the cellular level more efficiently than plain water alone. And the lemon juice provides a small dose of vitamin C, which has documented inhibitory effects on cortisol synthesis. Not dramatic, but additive when combined with the timing shift we're discussing. Simple, free, immediate. And for a surprising number of people, addressing morning dehydration alone produces enough cognitive clarity that the perceived urgency of that first coffee is significantly reduced. The fourth alternative, and this one is specifically for people who simply cannot remove caffeine from the first 90 minutes entirely, is matcha with additional L-theanine. Matcha contains approximately 35 milligrams of caffeine versus the 95 milligrams in a standard cup of coffee. More importantly, it contains L-theanine, an amino acid that modulates caffeine absorption, dampens the cortisol response associated with caffeine consumption, and smooths the alertness curve into something more sustained and less spike-driven. Owen and colleagues, studying 24 adults in a randomized crossover design, published in Nutritional Neuroscience in 2008, found that combined caffeine and L-theanine produced superior cognitive performance to caffeine alone, with significantly lower self-reported anxiety and jitteriness. For those who cannot make a clean break from morning caffeine, matcha is the transition protocol. Not ideal, but measurably better than a full-strength coffee during the car window. Let me now put this all together into the actual protocol, because the individual pieces are useful, but the sequence is where the real leverage is. I call it the morning brain window, the 90 minutes after waking when your brain chemistry is most responsive to what you do and consume. Here's the exact protocol derived from the research. Minutes 0 to 15, immediately upon waking, before anything else. 500 milliliters of water with a pinch of Himalayan salt and the juice of half a lemon. Room temperature or slightly warm. Drink it slowly, you don't need to force it down. This is rehydration. This is reestablishing cerebral blood flow. This is the simplest and most universally overlooked step in any morning brain protocol. Minutes 15 to 30. 10 minutes of natural light exposure if available. Direct sunlight, outside, or sitting by a large window. Natural light exposure in the morning activates the suprachiasmatic nucleus, the brain's master circadian clock, which amplifies the car in its natural, beneficial form and sets your cortisol rhythm correctly for the rest of the day. This is free, this is documented, and it makes everything else on this list work better. Minutes 30 to 60. Your choice between beetroot juice, 70 to 140 milliliters, or lion's mane tea, 500 milligrams to 1 gram of dual extract powder. This is the window of maximum cerebrovascular receptivity to the nitric oxide pathway, and the window where lion's mane NGF stimulation has the cleanest slate to work with. Minute 90 and beyond, this is when you make your coffee. The car has descended. Your prefrontal cortex is fully online. Adenosine has been accumulating for 90 minutes of wakefulness, and your receptors are genuinely ready to be blocked. The coffee you drink now will produce the cognitive clarity you've been trying to get at 7 a.m. for years, without the cortisol amplification, without the anxiety edge, and with a significantly reduced crash later in the afternoon. That's the protocol. 4 steps, 90 minutes. And the only thing that changes is the timing of something you were already going to drink. If you want this entire protocol mapped day by day across 30 days, with the full nutrition guide, the sleep optimization protocol, and the cognitive tracking tools that let you measure your own progress, the 30-day brain reset system has everything. 10 complete protocols, every study cited, every DOI linked. The link is in the description. Let me tell you exactly what to expect when you try this, because managing expectations is what determines whether someone sticks with a protocol long enough to see it work. Days 1 through 3. The most immediate change most people notice is in morning anxiety. Not because the protocol is dramatic, but because removing 20 to 30% of cortisol amplification from the first hour of your day has an effect that is felt relatively quickly. If you have any degree of morning anxiety or that vague morning unease we discussed, you will likely notice it is quieter. Not gone, but meaningfully reduced. This is real. It is mechanistic, and it happens faster than most interventions. Weeks 1 to 2, the afternoon crash begins to soften. The 2 p.m. energy cliff flattens out. Not because you're consuming less caffeine overall, you may be consuming the exact same amount, but because you're allowing adenosine to clear partially before you block it, which means the rebound when the caffeine wears off is less severe. Many people also report needing less coffee to achieve the same functional alertness, which is a direct sign that the adenosine system is rebalancing. Weeks 3 to 4, with the full protocol applied consistently, hydration, light exposure, morning alternative, and strategic coffee timing, the research documents measurable improvements in sustained attention, working memory performance, and self-reported mood scores. Not dramatic transformation. Genuine, measurable, neurologically explicable improvement in the cognitive functions that matter most in the first half of your day. Now here's what I want you to do tomorrow morning. Not next week, tomorrow. Before you reach for the coffee, drink the water first. 500 milliliters. That's it. That's the only instruction for day 1. Then on day 2, try pushing the first coffee to 90 minutes after waking. Just try it for 3 days. 3 days. The difference in your morning anxiety and your afternoon energy will tell you more than I ever could. And when you notice a difference, come back here and tell me about it. What changed first? The anxiety, the crash, the focus, the quality of the coffee itself when you finally have it. I read every comment on every video, every single one, and those reports from people who tried it are genuinely the most useful data I have for understanding which pieces of this protocol land hardest for different people. One last thing before I go. The reason this information is not common knowledge has nothing to do with it being secret or suppressed. It's just that the peer-reviewed neuroendocrinology literature and your kitchen have never really been introduced to each other. That's the gap this channel exists to close. Your cortisol awakening response has been trying to do its job every morning of your adult life. Tomorrow, let it finish. I'll see you in the next one. Dr. Cole out.